couple of lanes on the N3 just approaching Heidelberg. So between the Weybridge and the R23 Balfour exit, just expect to queue up in that particular scene. Also, the M1 highway was really busy yesterday getting through Deepcliff. This morning, there's a crash there. So N1 north onto the N12 down to Uncle Charlie's, already backlogging. Coming out of Pietermaritzburg, a new lane closure this morning. Left lane closed between Market Road and the Ashburton exit. That will have an impact. And Cape Town, Mitchell's Plain, busy, loaded up fully from deep in Mitchell's Plain up the M7 all the way to the R300. The AZ Berman drive option pretty heavily back from Morgansteer up through Highlands Drive towards the R300 as well. Baden Powell Drive currently open at Monwa BC and open at Coastal Park. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SFM sports headlines. Plenty of action last night. Mamelodi Sundowns going down to TX Galaxy, and we'll bring you the Proteas. They are in action today against Pakistan in the ODI Tri-Series. Details of these stories and more at around 6:30.
The Morning Brief, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Good morning, 6:07. John Gericke in for Thulasizwe this morning. It's good to be along with you. What's today? Wednesday already. Is it Wednesday? Hopefully it's Wednesday. It says here Wednesday. Oh, there we go. It says Wednesday. It's so early in the morning. How's it going? You all right? Busy show today, so let's get right into it. Let me tell you what's coming up in a little while. We're going to get an update on China. There's a decline in marriage registrations, and we're going to find out why. A number of reasons why there is a lack of marriage happening in China, but we're also going to find out what the implications of that is. A number of reasons and things we can talk about there. Then the big story over the last week or so is the tensions between South Africa and the US over the land reform policies, amongst others. Well, the European Union has pledged its full support to South Africa's leadership of the G20. We're going to find out what that means with a political economist and senior lecturer of economics and business science at Wits. It's been 6 years since Shamila Batoy became South Africa's first National Director of Public Prosecutions. What has her job been? Has she done the correct thing? She's had a very difficult task, let's face it, trying to turn the NPA around from those dark days of state capture period and trying to fix things up. But what will her legacy be? Her time is almost up, and we will chat a little bit about what Shamila Batoy has been up to. Love to get your opinion on what you feel she's done at the National Prosecuting Authority. A little bit later on today, we're going to talk, it's the financial struggles. You and I know exactly what it's like, but there's just been a new study revealing that the average worker spends 57% of their monthly income on transport and electricity. You heard Elvis talking about it a little bit earlier. We're going to analyze that a little bit more today. There's widespread concern from labor organizations, civil society, and you and I as well. 57% on transport and electricity. Then you still have to buy food and school fees and all the other things that you need to spend money on, and rent and or a housing loan, whatever you might have, just to get to work and to have the lights on so that you can cook. 57%. So we're going to analyze that a little bit today. A little bit more on our foreign policy. And then we're going to continue with the electricity tariffs. Massive amounts of increases happening on electricity, saying it's becoming a financial burden now just to keep the lights on. We're going to talk to Songezo Zibi, who's the Standing Committee on Public Accounts chair. They've expressed serious concerns over those tariffs, growing fears that the average South African can't afford the hikes anymore, and we're feeling that in our pocket, aren't we? There's ongoing issues with taxis in the Western Cape. We're going to talk to Santako of the Western Cape today. We're going to find out what is happening in that area. That's after torching of taxis at the Nyanga terminus on Sunday. There's worries about what is happening in our oceans. Global crisis models aren't exactly 100%, and the CSIR are saying we need to tweak that a little bit. And then towards the end of the program, a serious discussion on scary figures that have come out, that there were 7,400 children under the age of 18 treated for suicide attempts across South Africa in 2024, between April and December. Let me say that again. 7,400 children under the age of 18 treated for suicide attempts between April and December. It is an horrific amount of children. And we're going to talk about the reasons for that and also what options we have for those children and what is or isn't being done for those children. So all of that and plenty more coming up on the show. Welcome to it. John in for Thulasizwe. Let's get into the morning brief.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
In terms of the ANC's response to what Donald Trump said, a lot of your thoughts around the response has been less to Trump, but more to AfriForum. Why so?
Because we know, and I'm sure you also know, that they have traveled to the U.S. in particular to speak about this very issue that Donald Trump is responding to. That's not being the first time that they had done so. We are responding to them in the main because they are South African. We should be able to work with each other in finding solutions to the South African problem.
Lindiwe Zulu, the ANC National Executive Committee member.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. Missed it? Find the podcast at safm.co.za. If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
13 minutes past 6. Good morning, Anne Musa. Good chatting to you again.
Good morning, John. You well?
Yeah, it's. I'll let you know when I'm awake. I don't know how you guys do this every morning.
Coffee.
I'm a late night music guy. Suddenly I got to wake up at 4 in the morning. What is happening in the news this morning?
Well, members of Parliament's debate on President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address and political parties questioning the South African National Defence Force met in the DRC, US-South Africa relations, as well as the chronic underfunding of the education on the sector. The Correctional Services Department appeared before Parliament's Correctional Services Committee yesterday, and this was to discuss the implementation of the remedial action that was recommended by the Public Protector, and it came following the escape of the convicted murderer and rapist Thabo Bester in 2022. And in Limpopo, police have launched a manhunt, and this is for 4 awaiting trial prisoners who have escaped from police cells, and they are all foreign nationals who had been arrested for allegedly tampering with essential infrastructure in July of last year. In court today, the alleged underworld boss, Nafiz Modak, expected to take the stand in the Western Cape High Court, and this is to answer to the charge of murder of the top anti-gang unit detective Charles Kinnear, and it does come after his failed bid to have charges against him withdrawn. And we also have the 2 men accused of killing 9 people at a local tavern in Pinar, who's expected to appear in court, and they abandoned their bail application a few weeks ago, but are facing charges of 9 counts of murder, 1 attempted murder, and possession of unlicensed firearms. And also, just lastly, there's analysis on the Umkhonto weSizwe Party MP, Duduzile Zuma Sambudla, who has now issued an apology yesterday to the MK Party leader, Jacob Zuma, and the leadership of the party, but not directly to Floyd Shivambu, who was the central subject in her tweet. So some of the stories that we will be looking at.
One of those busy days for you, eh?
Always.
And not to even mention the sport. TS Galaxy. I'm not saying anything but TS
You
Galaxy.
know,
I have to rub it in.
actually, yeah. Anyway, spoke about this earlier actually with Marumo. So
Yes.
yeah, it says a lot. Says a lot, John.
Does. You
It
see,
says a lot.
I was listening to Janet earlier, and Janet was saying, like, nobody thought about it. It's like, hold on, go back to my 12:30 yesterday. We'll have a chat.
Yeah, but actually, how many times have Sundowns actually win against Galaxy?
Yeah, it's been close.
Uh-huh.
Galaxy looking strong.
Yeah, very strong.
Dark horse. And Musa, thanks very much. We'll chat later.
The Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
All right, I didn't call it, but yeah, I warned you. Let's get your weather today. There's an impact-based warning, yellow level 1 of damaging winds resulting in difficulty in navigation at sea between Cape Columbine and Cape Agulhas from midday today. Also, a fire danger warning, conditions expected over the northern central parts of the Northern Cape, as well as Saldanha Bay and the City of Cape Town municipalities of the Western Cape. And there's an advisory of a heat wave, persistently hot temperatures expected in places over the northeastern parts of the Eastern Cape, southwestern parts of the Free State, as well as the central and eastern parts of the Northern Cape until Monday. Pretoria, Johannesburg and Vereeniging today going to be fine, becoming partly cloudy this afternoon. Pretoria 16:32, Johannesburg 17:29, Vereeniging 17:31. Mbombela today is partly cloudy. It'll become cloudy this evening, 17 to 29. Polokwane is partly cloudy, 16:29. Maya King, partly cloudy, isolated showers and thunder showers, 20 to 33. Vryburg, partly cloudy, scattered showers and thunder showers, 20 to 36. Bloemfontein, Kimberley and Uppington, partly cloudy, isolated showers and thunder showers. Bloemfontein 21:36, Kimberley 23:38, Uppington 23 to 41. Cape Town today, partly cloudy. It'll become cloudy by the afternoon with a moderate southeaster. It'll become fresh to strong this afternoon, 19 to 26. George is cloudy, scattered showers and rain. A moderate southeasterly wind. It'll become fresh from the late morning, but a strong easterly from the afternoon, 19 to 23. Gqeberha is cloudy, scattered showers and rain. A moderate to fresh southeasterly wind, 20 to 25. East London's partly cloudy, becoming cloudy with isolated showers and thunderstorms. A moderate southwesterly wind becoming southeasterly this afternoon, 19 to 25. Durb's partly cloudy, moderate to fresh northerly to northeaster, 20 to 29. Richards Bay partly cloudy, a moderate to fresh easter to northeaster, 21 to 30. And Pietermaritzburg starts with fog, otherwise partly cloudy, 17 to a high of 30.
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned. And almost 100,000 businesses trust OUTsurance.
We're a sealing and partition company. I like OUTsurance. They have that personal touch. In addition to the great service they give me, they've also saved me and my company 3,266 Rand per month. Guys, make that call. It's well worth it.
For your business insurance, contact OUTsurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover. Or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer in FSP. T's and C's online.
The Yellow Guys have a top-class plan to play elite rugby to remain in the top 5. But second-place Giants, the Red and Blacks are undoubtedly chasing the first position. This is the top 14. Clermont-Auvergne collides with Stade Thulasizwe on Sunday, 16 February at 10 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Fizzy drinks and fruit juices can make our children sick. Sugar is dumped into their bodies with every sip, which could lead to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes as they age. We must protect them from drinks high in sugar. Demand a stricter health promotion levy now. Sign the petition on heala.org. That's HEALA.org.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
20 minutes past 6. Last year, China saw an historic decline in marriage registrations. It's a 25% drop from the previous year, or 20.5% drop from the previous year. It's the lowest number since the Ministry of Civil Affairs began tracking marriage data back in 1986. The decline, part of a broader demographic crisis, China grappling with a shrinking workforce, aging population, faltering economic growth. Talk more with that with Tom Moultrie, Professor of Demographic and Director at the Centre for Actuarial Research at the University of Cape Town. Tom, thank you very much for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning.
Why aren't people getting married in China anymore?
Well, I think it's part of a much broader global phenomenon that, in general, society has changed. The cost of having children has risen. Opportunity costs, particularly for women, of having children have increased hugely as they have become more educated and entered the workforce. And the combination of those things has meant that the pressure to get married and have children has changed, along with broader concerns are ecological and environmental reasons.
Let's talk about the demographic crisis that I mentioned there. It's a shrinking workforce, aging population. Are there just not as many young people in China?
Yes. Demography uses this term called momentum, which reflects how a population ages through time. And the decline in birth rates in China, starting with the one-child policy in the late 1980s, has basically meant that there are fewer younger children being born every year, particularly due to the one-child policy. And those children are now becoming mothers themselves. They've grown up in the environment of a one-child environment or no-child environment, and the rest of the population has aged. So roughly a fifth of the Chinese population is now aged over 60, and that does pose societal challenges.
That one-child policy resulted in a lot of boys being born. Has that got an effect as well? There's just fewer ladies?
I mean, it certainly, there's anecdotal evidence of it, of that one-child policy encouraging sex-specific choice of children. But that is not the major aspect of it. It's far more about women and their position in society, their opportunities which they have now, which they didn't have 50, 60 years ago, or even more recently in terms of education and in joining the labor force. And so it's not so much about a shortage of women to get married as opposed to women making a very conscious decision and couples making a conscious decision either not to get married or not to have children.
There's something called women's disillusionment with marriage. What does that mean?
Well, I think that for a lot of societies, the model which was advocated in the 1950s and 1960s was women would stay at home and have children, and that was their life. And within that, I think that with rising levels of education of women and girls and increased participation in the labour force, the structure of society has not accommodated those desires and those alternatives as well as they might have been able to do. And so women have made, and couples make the choice that having a child actually affects other opportunities in life.
You mentioned the economic pressures. Is that, I mean, I know we're talking about China, but is this a worldwide phenomenon? People are just struggling to make ends meet across the globe.
Yes, and it's not only in China, but as you mentioned, in most parts of Europe and parts of America and Latin America, and even in sub-Saharan Africa, we have seen a very rapid decline in fertility in recent years, and I think this is part of a cultural movement, and people see what's happening in other countries and see the choices other countries and other women in other countries are making, and all of those things, they say, well, it doesn't make sense to bring a child into the world with the costs associated with it, with the career limitations which it might bring.
What about attitudes? Is marriage like an old-fashioned thing, and you can cohabitate, or keep some freedom, and are young people looking at life differently?
Yes, and I think that's tied with a increase in secularization around the world. That questions of religion, where before you could only have a child if you were married, and that's obviously changed. And the role of the church or organized religion in societies has diminished over time, and it's no longer about people feeling that they have to conform to societal expectations in quite the same way which they had to 40, 50 years ago.
China's famous for getting involved in personal issues. So what are they doing as a country to try and get more people to marry and have more children?
Well, I think it's a truism. It's very hard for the state to reach inside the bedroom. It can, certainly you can do it by kind of some form of duress or pressure. So, for example, the one-child policy, where it instituted sanctions on having more than one child. But to encourage women to have children or couples to have children is a much more difficult thing, because it would require, either a dystopian world of like The Handmaid's Tale, where women are basically used to only bear children, or you've got to set in place a much broader set of social policies which, will allow women and couples to reconsider the opportunity costs of having children.
I've heard stories about financial incentives. The state is making blind dating events, mass weddings, cash handouts. Do those work?
Probably not. I mean, all the evidence from everywhere in the world, suggests that a once-off handout for getting married or a once-off handout for having a child doesn't compensate for the much longer costs and much higher costs which are borne. If you have a child, you've got to raise it for 20 or something years. A once-off handout of a couple of R1,000 is not really going to shift that calculus. So it's far more about trying to set in place things about maternity leave, about the right to return to work, changing a whole structure of how society, views young people, to allow them to make choices which might lead to higher birth rates if that's what you want.
Tom, you've mentioned women a lot. What's the male perspective on this in China?
It's one. It takes obviously it's couples who generally tend to have children, and I think that the changing gender dynamics between men and women globally has meant that kind of whereas before women were meant to be compliant and obedient to their partners, that's changed, and I think it's now far more a realization that the real cost of childbearing are borne by women in terms of economics, in terms of labor force participation, in terms of opportunities in life, and that is now part of the calculus of couple negotiation about having children.
We're talking about this, Tom, but why should we worry about a declining marriage?
I'm not sure we should be worrying about it.
It's just an interesting fact.
It's what it is. I'm not sure that to say that it's the decline in marriage is giving rise to all these other problems. It's more about saying that this is the kind of hand of cards these societies are dealing with, and the challenge for China is how to deal with an aging population, how to deal with pensioners, how to deal with a shrinking labor force. But I think to simply blame it or to say, well, the crises of marriage and of childbirth, I think diverts attention from a broader set of changes in society which need to be managed, whether it's in China or Italy or most parts of Europe. These are it's the new world challenges which we're living in.
Tom Moultrie, thank you very much. Professor of Demography and the Director of the Centre for Actuarial Research at the University of Cape Town. 20.5% less marriages in China in 2024. Your views on marriage? Still a thing? 29 minutes past 6. Let's take a quick voice note before we go to news headlines.
Good morning, John. You know what? Shamila Batoyi has done nothing. She's the one whom I think she's also captured. And she cannot even do anything. That one, she has done nothing. It's good for her to go. And Mr. President, Mr. Ramaphosa must look for the person who is able to make sure that the Zondo Commission is taken into consideration and all the recommendations are done.
It's going to be our interview at 7:15. 6 years since Shamila Batoyi became South Africa's first female national director of public prosecutions. No high-profile politicians been convicted of state capture. What do you think of that? We'll have that interview in about 15 minutes or so. Now, news headlines at 6:30.
Good morning. Thanks, John. In the headlines, the majority of political parties represented in Parliament have expressed deep concern on the position taken by the U.S. administration to cut funding to South Africa. Police have arrested 2 more suspects in connection with the torching of over 50 Patco buses in Mpumalanga last month, and public sector unions under the Federation of Unions of South Africa have accepted government's wage offer of 5.5% for their members. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Morning update on that copy situation, the N1 between Bloemfontein and Joburg, a big crash and big delays. It's on the Kruenstad Koppie section of the N1, but it is just south, maybe 5k south of Koppies, where you've got some standing traffic, trucks in both directions through there. Motorists driving in from Protea Glen towards Uncle Charlie's this morning. 2 crashes, one before the Golden Highway on the N12 eastbound, and then as you get up through Diepkloof down towards the Mike 1 connection, another crash as you come off that N1 north onto the N12 and into Diepkloof interchange. Fairly busy on the N1 through Midrand. John Foster down to New Road is the backlog at this stage. Durban traffic looking fairly normal. There is a crash at Spaghetti Junction as you come through the interchange towards Sherwood, causing some delays. And Cape Town, a pretty heavy midweek Wednesday. A lot of people going to the office on Wednesday. You can see that on Cape Town's routes. The M5 already backlogging to Parkwood. The N2's heavy from Khayelitsha. And the M1 extending a queue right back into Brackenfell. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, I said it earlier, I'm going to say it again. I warned under my sports report yesterday, I said TS Galaxy a banana skin for Sundowns.
Banana skin for Sundowns.
And they slipped up.
What is it with Adnan Begovic? I mean, he's like, what? Making a team like Sundown stumble. Sundown fan, how you feeling? Dizzy? I think they're feeling a bit dizzy this morning. And I can see Orlando Pirates fans are smiling because that title race, I don't know. You know, Miguel Cardoso, unbeaten run just ended. So, yeah, last week we saw Sundown celebrating 4-1. Their humiliation of Orlando Pirates. This week, they're the ones walking away empty-handed after a 1-0 loss to TS Galaxy at Mbombela Stadium. So we've got their coach now. This is the Sundowns coach, adding in retrospect, accepting to travel to Nelspruit so soon after that high-tempo match against Pirates was a mistake.
There's only one thing to do is look forward, get up, rest, recover. We were not the best in the world after last match, and we are of course not in the opposite position now. We just clearly understand that it's absolutely impossible to have a schedule like this and play the 4th match in 72 hours in a row. And so I think that we made also a very big mistake by having a chance to play a game in 72 hours. It was absolutely impossible. So eventually it was important to have put in some more fresh players to play. But we tried our best.
Let's go down to Jude Bellingham. His stoppage time winner saw Real Madrid twice come from behind to beat Manchester City 3-2 in the first leg of their Champions League playoff. Here's Man City boss Pep Guardiola.
For me, it would be easy to say no and blame one player, specific player, or blame whatever. That is ridiculous. So it's not. That doesn't work. It's all of us. Me the first, because that's why I'm here for many years, and of course the players as well. So this is the truth, and they want it. Yes, of course, how they run, how they do it. But the truth is that we are not stable enough in that moments to do things that they happen. Not today. Today is an exception. No, it happened many times.
Let's look at Paris Saint-Germain taking a big step towards qualifying for the last 16. Also Champions League, 3-0 was their win over French rivals Brest in the first leg of their playoff last night. Juventus, they have a slender advantage. 2-1 was their win over PSV in their Champions League knockout phase playoff. Now, staying with football, the former Spanish Soccer Federation president, Luis Rubiales, reiterated before a judge that forward Jenny Hermoso gave him consent for a kiss at the 2023 Women's World Cup final presentation ceremony. Rubiales is accused of sexual assault and coercion for allegedly trying to downplay the kiss that sparked outrage in Spain and marred the celebrations of the team's first World Cup title. Now, Hermoso said on the first day of the trial she did not consent. Rubiales said he admits the kiss was a mistake, saying he behaved more as a former player than as president of the institution that he was. Rugby news, the Sharks scrum Oxen Chair has been unveiled as the best player in the URC according to the official competition ranking system. The Sharks prop is the number one in the top 100, the ranking system which reflects performances across the URC, EPCR competitions and international rugby. Following in the footsteps of fellow Springbok loosehead prop Stephen Kitchoff, who twice previously topped the chart, 29-year-old Chair leads the way in the rankings, which include 5 more South Africans in the top 10, namely Bulls, Eldrick Low, Gerard Steenkamp, Lions fullback Juan Horn, Shark centre Andre Esterhuizen and Edinburgh prop Boan Venter. And finally, tennis on Jabeur, the Tunisian, advancing to the last 16 of the Qatar Open following a straight sets win over Xi Zhenjiang. Jabeur claimed a 6-4, 6-2 victory. And another match, Martha Kostyuk stunning the third seed Coco Gauff to advance to the last 16, 6-2, 7-5 was that victory. And that's where we wrap it up. We'll serve you more sport. Top of the hour, I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Let's get what's happening with Ntauling Lachela. Ntauling, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Morning, John. I hope you're good.
Always good. All right, what do we got on the markets today? Sam Altman rejects Musk bid to get OpenAI. Musk is just trying to own everything here.
You know, and as I thought about this, I thought to myself, President Trump and Elon Musk must meet up weekly and discuss ways to disrupt the world and cause chaos. Because if it's not Trump, it's Elon Musk, right? And this time around, Musk made a $97.4 billion bid to buy OpenAI. This move is seen as an attempt to block OpenAI's transition to a for-profit firm, which Musk believes goes against the company's original mission. Now, a bit of background here. Musk actually co-founded OpenAI with CEO Sam Altman in 2015 as a non-profit, but left before the company gained traction. He has since then founded XAI, a competing AI startup, and has been critical of OpenAI's shift towards profit making. Now, OpenAI, which is the maker of ChatGPT, is in the process of restructuring by converting its for-profit unit into a public benefit corporation. It says this will allow it to raise funds more easily while considering societal impacts. The non-profit arm, in the meantime, will retain shares in the PBC. The bid has sparked tensions between Musk and Altman, with Musk claiming that OpenAI's transition to a for-profit structure violates its original contract. Musk has also sued Altman and others seeking to block the transition. In response to the bid, OpenAI's board has stated that it has no interest in Musk's bid, and Altman has said that the company is not for sale. However, analysts believe that Musk's offer could complicate OpenAI's funding efforts and its transition to a for-profit corporation.
And Kering's fourth quarter sales not great.
Yes, Gucci, parent company Kering, has undergone major changes in an attempt to restructure the business. This includes new CEOs at its top brands. Despite these efforts, Kering struggled with declining earnings, particularly at Gucci, its largest brand. Gucci's revenue declined 24% in the fourth quarter. The brand's recurring operating income dropped over 50% in fiscal 2024. Now, Kering's chairman and CEO, Francois Henry Pinault, acknowledged the challenges but expressed confidence in the company's transformation efforts. Pinault stated that Kering has made moves to strengthen its brands, improve product strategies, and enhance distribution. Now, zooming in on regional performance, Asia Pacific retail revenue declined 24%, while North America and Western Europe saw declines of 11% and 9% respectively. Japan, however, bucked the overall trend with 9% growth. Now, this performance really reflecting the overall performance we've been seeing in the luxury market as consumers in most parts of the world spend less on luxury items, particularly in China, where there's been a consumption problem there. The exception is Richemont. The Cartier owner continues to deliver sales growth, outperforming its competitors. Looking ahead, Kering seems optimistic, projecting top-line growth and low profitability in the first half of the year. This also being reflected by one of its competitors, LVMH, who expect the luxury market to start recovering in 2025.
It's a different world, those companies, I tell you what. What's happening on the markets today?
Now, the mood in markets remains mixed. That playing out in the US as trade remained choppy. Investors on that front digesting cautious commentary from Fed Chair Jerome Powell on interest rates. Concerns remain over the direction of the economy amid US tariffs and the possible escalation of a global trade war. And with that, we saw the NASDAQ close in the red, down 0.36%. And this also playing out at home with the JSE closing mixed, but mostly in the red. The all share shedding close to 0.25%, fueled by a 0.7% fall in the resources 10 complex. Then over in the currency front, the rand is on the back foot this morning, trading above 18.50 to the greenback. This as the dollar made gains following Powell's hawkish commentary last night. And then looking at Asian markets, stocks mixed as well, with traders assessing the trade situation and its potential impact on the global economy.
Darling Lachela, thank you very much. More business coming up in an hour's time.
Is there ever a bad time for a good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Coming up in a moment, it's been 6 years since Shamila Batoy became the National Director of Public Prosecutions. No high-profile politicians being convicted of state-captured corruption under her tenure yet, and I'm asking you, what do you make of her time in office? Her term ends next year, being criticized for a failure to secure major convictions. The Household Affordability Index has raised alarms over the financial struggles faced by working South Africans. Did you see this number? 57% of monthly income is spent just on transport and electricity. It's mind-boggling. And America's going on about the price of eggs. South Africa faces a delicate balance in its foreign relations. Looking forward to that conversation. It's really difficult for South Africa at the moment. It's almost as if we're between the West and the East, for using big words. China, US, there's tensions there. Where does South Africa fit in the world picture? We're going to talk to Arno van Niekerk, Senior Lecturer in Economics at the University of the Free State. Let's go to our next story at the moment. We're going to talk about Shamila Batoy now, South Africa's first female National Director of Prosecutions. What has she been doing about the state capture cases in particular and ongoing challenges with the National Prosecuting Authority? Advocate Paul Hoffman is the Director and Head of Projects at Accountability Now. Advocate, thank you very much for joining us. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you and to your listeners as well. Thank you for the opportunity.
6 years in office. In February, Shamila Batoy is appointed as NDPP National Director. What would you say her legacy so far is?
Well, it's a legacy of apologizing for being unable to do her job properly. But that's not really her fault. It's the fault of the government, which has simply ignored our international treaty obligations and has also turned a blind eye to the findings of the Constitutional Court in two successive cases called the Glenister litigation, in which it was clearly laid down that an entity outside executive control ought to be given the job of dealing with things like state capture and corruption in general. And she's never been able to persuade politicians to do what is needed. And as a consequence of that, she spent much of her time making excuses for the inability of the National Prosecuting Authority, which she leads, to do its job in the manner required by the Constitution, efficient and effective use of resources.
How much of that is because of the state capture years? The NPA was weakened during those times, gutted almost.
Yes, no, the closure of the Scorpions was Act 1 of state capture. And state capture wouldn't have happened had South Africa had the legal framework in which a entity outside of executive control could take on the corrupt. What has really happened, and Paul Pretorius puts it so well when he says that the NPA has been given a Volkswagen Beetle of ancient vintage as an entrant in a Formula One race in which all the other cars competing are Ferraris and Mercedes-Benzes and Aston Martins. And that really is a very vivid image of what has been going on. The undercapacitated, lacking the skills, not properly trained, too few personnel, no equipment that enables you to use artificial intelligence and modern forensic technology, and you're up against corrupt people who can afford the best legal brains in the country and use the best legal brains in the country to run circles around the prosecutors who are thrown into the fray on the odd occasion that they do get to court. And the leader of the unit that is meant to be looking after the state capture and other corruption cases tells her staff, and it's captured on audio tape, fake it till you make it. That's the advice that's given. I mean, really.
So you've got to turn around a very big ship and try and improve that ship that's been hollowed out. Has she been doing that? Can she use that as a reason for the lack of prosecutions?
No, I don't think she has been doing it. She's really trying to protect her own turf instead of obeying the highest court in the land, which has said, create a separate body outside of the control of the executive to deal with corruption. And that is not part of her agenda. She could have got behind the Breitenbach bills for the Chapter 9 Anti-Corruption Commission, which are in the works and going to be debated in Parliament very soon, but she hasn't. She prefers to try and get the square peg that is the National Prosecuting Authority into the round hole that is effective and efficient anti-corruption activity. And it's not going to happen, and she will be remembered as a weak leader who was unable to use the law to improve the situation insofar as the anti-corruption fight is concerned. On other aspects, the normal common law crimes, the National Prosecuting Authority does a lot of good work, but when it comes to corruption, I'm afraid they are not up to scratch and cannot be expected to become up to scratch for so long as they are under the final responsibility of the Minister of Justice from time to time, and for so long as the Director General of the Department of Justice is the accounting officer of the National Prosecuting Authority. That leaves you in a situation where executive control is a given. The NPA is actually run as a program within the Department of Justice. Now, that's exactly what the courts have said should not happen if you want to be serious about getting on top of corruption. And that raises the question, are our politicians willing to get serious about seeing off the corrupt who have done so much damage in the state capture and COVID-preneurism and tenderpreneurism and common and garden corruption that infects South Africa.
Advocate, you've been very critical, and we've heard it now. Tell me about the investigating directorate, seen as window dressing?
Yes, the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption, which is touted as a permanent body. It's not. It is simply a reiteration of the Scorpions, who were closed down summarily when Jacob Zuma got his hands on the levers of power in the presidency and at Latuli House. The idea, IDAC, the leader of IDAC is the one who said, fake it till you make it. It's undercapacitated, not properly trained, too few people, too few resources, too little technical and forensic assistance. It is, in fact, a joke and could be closed down summarily. It is not constitutionally compliant. And if the Breitenbach bills are not a success, which they should be, then we will get ourselves back into litigation and have IDAC declared an unconstitutional departure from what the law requires.
You mentioned political interference. Is part of that the financial constraints that the NPA is suffering, that the budget just isn't big enough and they're not being helped in that way?
Yes, turkeys don't vote for Christmas, and you can't expect a corrupt elite to capacitate the the limping IDAC appropriately. So it's a vicious circle, and it needs to be broken. And the way is to establish a Chapter 9 institution that is able to effectively and efficiently counter corruption. And the joke is that in August 2020, the National Executive Committee of the ANC, which is its highest decision-making body between congresses, says to Cabinet in an urgent instruction, please urgently set up a standalone, independent, permanent anti-corruption body. And that instruction has been ignored. IDAC is certainly not standalone. It is part of the NPA, and the NPA suffers from the lack of independence that I've sketched.
Advocate, we need to wrap it up there. Thank you very much, Advocate Paul Hoffman, Director and Head of Projects at Accountability Now. What do you make of all of that? 6 years since Shamila Batoy became the National Director of Public Prosecutions. It's 9 minutes to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy backlogs here in the Four Ways area. We're aware of the long-term traffic light issues around Four Ways. Hardly a light working on Vic Copper. The light outage, if you're coming in from Dainford or Winnie Mandela, starts at about Uranium Street and goes right through. In fact, there's hardly a light working between Uranium and Leslie. I think that's 5 or 6 really big junctions that are just in complete darkness. And what we're seeing feedback coming in from Four Ways, not only motorists running very late for work and having to alter and leave the house sort of 5:30 or before just to get through, but it's the amount of school kids that are now starting to run late for school. It's a really big problem around Four Ways. Not only Winnie Mandela and Cedar, but also loads of lights off on Vidcoppen as well. The problems there start at sort of North Riding area on Vidcoppen and go right through the region down to the main road junction. Malabongwe Drive, absolutely no better from Kaya Sam through North Riding, Sharon Lee, across the highway, including the highway into Stratham Park, all out. And Bayers Nordia from Honeydew down through Rampark Ridge and across the highway into Fairland down to Cresta as well. Hardly a traffic light working there. Really big commuting areas, probably the busiest commuting areas across Joburg, and you're just being asked to queue on a daily basis with traffic light problems. In some cases have been off for 2 years. 2 years to fix traffic light. Coming into Joburg from Protea Glen Lenasia, very heavy, big queues there. A crash on the N12 at the Golden Highway exit at Eldorado Park, pushing a backlog right back to the sort of second of those Lenasia exits. Into Durban we go with a crash at Spaghetti Junction, very slow getting through the N3. If you're coming off the N2, north and south, there's some real problems on those ramps from the N2 into the N3 because you're basically driving straight into that crash delay. M13, Hillcrest through to Kloof, looking a bit busy this morning. And Cape Town, busy midweek Wednesday, forming up with queues on the M1 already from Brackenfell through to the Kuiper interchange. M5 is from Southfield and Parkwood all the way up to the Kuiper interchange. The N2 is heavy this morning, standing from Spine Road, Khayelitsha, queues right through to the Borges Quarry exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Don Gerika on SAFM.
It's 6 minutes to 7. The latest Household Affordability Index report has raised alarms over the financial struggles faced by you and I. Average worker spends over 57% of their monthly income on transport and electricity, sparked widespread concern from labour organisations, civil society as well. Mervyn Abrams is Programme Coordinator at the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group that did some of this research. Mervyn, thank you very much for joining us. You're calling for a conversation on this affordability crisis. Tell us more.
So good morning, John, and good morning to all the listeners. Yes, the situation in the country from an economic viewpoint has become so dire in the sense that workers, and now we're not talking about those who are unemployed, we're just talking about workers, that the level of wages are so low in terms of the national minimum wage versus the costs of goods and services, whether that be administered costs like electricity costs, transport, food, rent, school fees, etc., that workers are not able to come out on the wages that they are currently having. So how do we look at the possibility either of increasing wages or ensuring that goods and services do not increase as much as it has? And then in particular with regard to food, we have seen that the input costs for food production, particularly now that we no longer have load shedding, should be significantly lower, because they no longer are paying for the extra diesel. They're no longer paying for the extra petrol to keep generators running. And yet we see food prices continue to increase, even though it's a smaller increase than has previously been the case. So there really needs to be a conversation, because if workers are not able to spend their money in the economy, then that means that we are taking away from the potential of economic growth. Because if they have 400 Rand left over, for instance, they would spend that in buying extra goods and services, which means those goods and services will have to be created and produced for them. But currently it is not. So it's actually dragging our economy and keeping it at a low growth level.
Mervyn, it's a vicious circle, right? If you lower the price of goods, then the people making those goods won't make as much money, and they won't get the increases, and then it just becomes a vicious circle. So how do you fix that problem?
So really it is looking at whether the increases are fair, John. And, for instance, the Competition Commission has come out with a report not so long ago around what they call the feather effect, that when input costs increase, then, of course, we see an immediate increase in the costs of goods and services, particularly food. But when the input costs decrease, we do not see a corresponding decrease. So the question is, where in the food value chain are these increases fair increases? And that is where the conversation needs to be. If I might just mention that, for instance, in the UK, just over a decade ago, they had a commission of inquiry led by a few judges to look at the food price situation. And the net result was that food prices dropped significantly. So I'm not saying that they are willy-nilly increasing it, but just give us the facts and figures as to where and how. And that's what the conversation needs to be about, as well as how can government keep some of our inflationary pressures down through the municipalities and Eskom in particular. The Eskom tariff increase, the water and the rates increases that municipalities are leveling.
Obviously, we're going to talk about electricity later on as well, but let's talk about the transport. It's spatial planning in South Africa still has the legacy of the past. The trains are struggling, and they've slowly being re-implemented, which is cheaper. How do we cushion the poor?
So really what we need to say is what are the most basic expenses that households must incur in order to live a life of dignity. And so that would be, for instance, transport, it would be electricity, and it would be food. So knowing that and knowing the low levels of wages, how can we make those things affordable at least? Because, John, we actually pay for them. We pay for it. So the fact that households aren't able to eat sufficient food, we pay for it in increased spending in our health budget. We pay for it in lower outcomes of our educational budgets. So we do pay for it elsewhere. So how do we ensure that at the consumer level, these things are at an affordable rate, understanding the level of wages in this country?
Things need to be done quickly, Mervyn Abrams. Is there the political will, and the budget speech is around the corner?
Unfortunately, I think the political will is not there. Government speaks constantly. I mean, the president last year in his own address spoke about value, cutting some foods from value-added tax and re-looking at this whole issue around food. For a whole year, we have seen no movement around that. They've also spoken about bringing down administered prices, municipal prices, but we haven't seen any movement. So I'm not expecting that the Minister of Finance will say anything in this regard that is useful.
Mervyn Abrahams, thank you very much. Program Coordinator at the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. The average worker spending 57% of their monthly income on transport and electricity. We're going to be talking about electricity later on, about what is going on there. Standing Committee on Public Accounts has expressed serious concern over Eskom's skyrocketing tariffs. That's coming up at 7:20. Right now, 7 o'clock, time for the news on SAFM.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30760. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, political parties deeply concerned over Trump's threats to cut funding to South Africa, and 2 more arrests in Mpumalanga Patco bus arson attacks. Good morning. The majority of political parties represented in Parliament have expressed deep concern on the position taken by the U.S. administration to cut funding to South Africa. The decision by the U.S. President Donald Trump to sign the executive order took center stage during the State of the Nation address debate yesterday. DA leader and Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen says the position taken by the U.S. calls for the government of national unity to unite.
Potential threat of AGOA and possibly even sanctions by a regime driven by an administration that will put America's interests ahead of ours. And make no mistake about that. And so what do? When a country faces a crisis, it needs to unite and navigate the threat. And that is what we must do now. And the GNU must practice what it preaches. And that is why, in a variety of portfolios, we've taken a decision to focus like a laser beam on growth and jobs. And that was what the President set out in the SONA.
In the same debate, the MK Party's leader in Parliament, Dr. John Hlophe, urged South Africa not to surrender the Democratic Republic of Congo to the rebels. This amid calls by some political parties for the SNDF peacekeepers to withdraw from the eastern DRC. 14 SNDF soldiers were killed in the fighting between M23 rebels and the DRC Defence Force. Hlophe says any inferior response by South Africa might worsen the situation.
These rebels are funded by foreign role players, including the foreign governments and businesses which use rebels as conduits and militia to loot our natural endowments and wealth. If we run away and surrender DRC to the rebels, they will gain confidence and cause destabilization in the whole of East Africa and then proceed to Southern Africa like they have already started in Mozambique.
Police have arrested 2 more suspects in connection with the torching of over 50 Patco buses in Mpumalanga last month. Police say the suspects were arrested yesterday at Siyabuswa in Mpumalanga. The suspects are expected to appear in court today on charges of malicious damage to property. This brings to 4 the number of people arrested. The Western Cape Education Department says over the past few weeks they've received more than 9,000 new applications for Grade 1 and Grade 8 learners for this academic year. Provincial Education Minister David Mayneer says placement is in progress for late applications.
As of the 7th of February 2025, we have resolved 131,800, or 98.8% of the unique Grade 1 and Grade 8 placement applications for the 2025 school year, and are in the process of placing 1,586, or 1.2% of the Grade 1 and Grade 8 applicants. It's important to note that the majority of the cases where placement is still in progress are extremely late applications.
Public sector unions under the Federation of Unions of South Africa, FEDUSA, have accepted government's wage offer of 5.5% for their members. The Public Service Coordinating Bargaining Council gave the parties 21 days last month to canvass their members on the final offer for the employer. The FEDUSA bloc has been joined by the South African Policing Union that has also accepted the same offer. The workers' demands have been revised down several times from an initial 12%. FEDUSA's General Secretary Rifta Ajam.
NAPTOSA has indeed signed off on the agreement, and so too have our larger unions within the chamber, and that is NAPTOSA, the PSA, as well as Hospice. NAPTOSA within the Education Labour Relations Council would have the majority seat then, which ultimately means that our other unions in chamber, the SAOU, NATU as well, have signed off, and we are pleased to announce that the members have spoken. They have taken a number of issues into careful consideration.
Recapping the top story, the majority of political parties represented in Parliament have expressed deep concern on the position taken by the US administration to cut funding to South Africa. DA leader and Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen says the position taken by the US calls for the Government of National Unity to unite. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
February may be a short month, but with Outsurance, your car insurance savings could be big. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. Make that 1,500 Rand if you're being claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Get monthly savings in your car insurance or cash in your pocket. Either way, you win. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's are online.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very slow coming into Joburg. Got a Protea Glen this morning, or joining from Lenasia. It's a crash on the N12 eastbound, just by the Golden Highway exit. You come up to Eldos, and that's pushing a traffic queue deep back into Lenasia territory. Also a crash on the M1 North, just leaving Soweto up by the Main Reef Road Bridge. So Soweto towards Ridderport, badly held up. A lot of congestion just around the Heidelberg area, driving into Joburg between the Weybridge and Heidelberg. There's a couple of trucks that have collided, causing some delays there. Durban, very heavy through Spaghetti Junction, a crash going inbound just through the interchange. So the N3 from Pavilion slow into that scene, but it really is what's happening on the N2. The ramps to get off the N2 onto the N3 are impossible to navigate this morning. They are solidly blocked. So the N2 north from the M7, the N2 south from Umgeda Road, very heavily backed up. The M7 towards the Bluff is pretty extreme as well. Big queues from Queensborough down through to Bel Air and Wakesley Road. A big crash just south of Copies in the Free State. If you're on the N1, expect some hold-ups both directions there. And Cape Town pretty busy on the N1. We're queuing from Brackenfell all the way through to Kuburg Interchange. And the R300 looking busy now from Delft up towards the Van Riebeek exit into Kales River and Belleville. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports headlines. It's soccer action. TS Galaxy ending Mamelodi Sundowns' 10-match winning streak. And in tennis action, the world number one, Aryna Sabalenka, stunned, beaten by Ekaterina Alexandrova at the Qatar Open. Details and more around 7:30.
The Morning Brief, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Good morning, John Gericke in for Thulasizwe this morning. He'll be back again tomorrow. It's 7:09. Great to be along with you on a Wednesday morning. We were just talking about the 57% of salaries that's spent on electricity and transport, and we're going to focus on both of those sectors in the next hour or so. Scopa have had something to say, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, about Eskom skyrocketing electricity tariffs. They've expressed serious concerns. We're going to talk to the chair of Scopa, and I guess it's all part of the transport. Santako has strongly condemned the torching of taxis at the Nyanga terminus on Sunday, having to buy new taxis and insurance and pay all those extra fees. That's going to increase the price of taxi fares in the Western Cape. So we're going to talk to Santako Western Cape today as well. We're going to hear what they have to say about the torching and what is going on in the Western Cape. Later on, we're going to talk about global crisis. There's a problem with our oceans. The climate models are not right, and they need to account for the declines in ocean warming and ocean productivity is the two words that they're using. And then later on as well, it's a horrific story. 7,400 children under the age of 18 treated for suicide attempts across South Africa from April to December of last year. Is it a crisis? We will talk to the operations of SADAG, the South Africa, and find out a little bit more from what is going on there, highlighting concern of mental health crisis amongst young people. Got a couple of tweets and SMSs on that topic as well, so stay close for that. It's 10 minutes past 7.
Whether you're having a early, snoozy, tantrumy, chill, frustrating, or jokey morning. Mornings love McDonald's, so choose happy and enjoy a Burry Burger double and a short filter coffee for only R39.90 from 6 to 10:30 a.m. at McDonald's.
Oh, oui, oui, Jessica, I Citroën you. You are my chérie de go. I am your wild track ranger.
What are you doing?
I'm just looking on WeBuyCars' website for what I'm getting you for Valentine's Day.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, they have a nationwide spin and win promotion where you can score a guaranteed prize of up to 10,000 Rand when you purchase a car.
Ooh, now that's romantic.
There's also hundreds of discounted auction vehicles available.
So what are we waiting for?
See you this Valentine's Day weekend at WeBuyCars, the easiest way to buy and sell a car by far.
Imagine if you could save time like you save money. A second here, a minute there. Type a little faster, walk a little faster. Or you could stop scrolling on the internet. Just think of all the hours you'll save. Now what if you could take all that time and invest it? Watch it grow. Until eventually, one day, you'd have so much time that you wouldn't know what to do with it all. But unfortunately, time doesn't work like that. It can't be stored or banked. And unlike money, you can't make it back. That's why after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money. And then money gives you more time to do whatever you want to do, even if it is scrolling on the internet. Ellen Gray, long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
SAFM values your views. Be an active citizen.
12 minutes past 7 o'clock here with SAFM. Now, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, or SCOPE, has expressed serious concerns over the skyrocketing electricity tariffs. Fears that the average South African can no longer afford these hikes. We heard about that earlier. 57% of salaries spent on electricity and transport. Zongezo Zibi is the Standing Committee on Public Accounts chair, joins us now. Zongezo, tell us why you're worried about these increases.
Good morning, John, and thank you very much for having me. So the electricity tariffs came up in a discussion about the amount of money that Eskom is owed by municipalities, partly, because it all kind of comes together. By March of this year, municipalities will be owing Eskom close to 100 billion rand. Now, if Eskom has access to that revenue, then it's very likely that what they ask for as revenue recovery from NERSA would be less. So that was one. The second was instances of unauthorized wasteful expenditure and other such shortcomings in governance that also have an impact on Eskom's financial position and therefore what it applies for in terms of funding. But it certainly wasn't the only thing. I mean, the committee substantively discussed governance and other matters in the main.
Part of this, let's jump over the money that is owed, a huge amount, but the financial mismanagement of Eskom. There's been the qualified audit opinion 2324, accountability, internal controls. How do we fix these issues?
So one of the things that we raised, I mean, these are certainly very serious issues, but one of the issues that we raised in the meeting is that the calendar of audits and their presentation to Parliament is, unfortunately, takes really long. The information that was presented to the committee is information up to the 31st of March last year. That means in the knowledge gap, there is several months. In fact, it is now 10 months worth of work that has been done either to mitigate some of the issues identified in the audit, or to put Eskom in a better financial position. We have engaged with Eskom's management and board last year, I think it was in October, in an oversight visit that took 2 days. And management updated us on the work that they're doing. So what we've asked them to do is to come to Parliament and close that gap between March last year and basically 31st of December 2024. So that we can assess how much work has been done to deal with these issues. So I do want to caution the public and listeners about the time period of the information that we're dealing with.
Yeah, that's since then, load shedding has all but disappeared. We had a bad weekend. Things seem to be turning around, but how do you increase the speed at which you're getting these financial figures? Because the work you're doing today is only really being based on work you got a year ago. So how do you change that around?
No, we've been working with Eskom's management for quite some time. In fact, Eskom issued their interim results at the end of on the 25th of January, for the six months ending on 30 September 2024. I must say it shows a vastly improved financial situation at Eskom. I mean, the debt is still high because it is historical debt, but I can tell you what was 1.2 billion rand profit by Eskom is now over 20 billion rand operating profit, and so on. And that's a factor of the fact that Eskom is able to sell more electricity because there's been no load shedding for a significant amount of time, and so on. The savings have continued to be sustained, and so what I'm wanting to say is that although we're given information up to the 31st of March, there is also other publicly available information that shows that the financial performance of Eskom is improving. One of the things we've asked Eskom to present on, John, when they come, is some of the proposals they have around the management of the municipal debt in such a way that we relieve the financial pressure on Eskom, and we also relieve the financial pressure on municipalities. And they have some very interesting proposals to table before Parliament, and we look forward to that.
Sorry, Sengeza, I just want to understand. You mentioned that Eskom is making a profit?
An operating profit, John.
I don't know what that means.
That means... So operating profit for the listeners is that profit before tax and other deductions.
In other words, money they owe on loans.
Yeah, so they still have to service loans, they still have to pay tax and so on. So that's what operating profit is in very simple terms. I don't want to complicate it.
Sure.
Then the net profit is the profit that you get after you've paid for all your obligations. The reason operating profit is important is that you are able to see whether your core operations are generating the cash that they're supposed to. And for the understanding of the listeners, if there is lots of load shedding, it means Eskom is selling less electricity. So, and therefore the operating profit will be less operating revenue. So if there's no load shedding, then they sell more.
If Eskom got rid of all of their debts, for example, they would have more money, which means electricity prices could come down. It's those debts that they've built up over a decade. That's the problem.
It's the debts they've built up over the decades. Eskom pays billions per month servicing that debt per month.
Okay. What can Scopa do to change any of this? Because, as we heard, massive amounts of money being spent on electricity and transport. If people can't afford to cook their food and keep the lights on, then the economy is just going to collapse.
No, of course, look, we're working with Eskom and other state-owned enterprises and ministers to find solutions. And I'll give just a few examples. For instance, and I'll talk about Transnet and Eskom interchangeably. Eskom have a proposal that would relieve pressure on their balance sheet around the municipal debt. They've got a proposal around relieving the pressure on their balance sheet, which means their ability to find money from the capital markets would become easier and not be a burden on taxpayers, but at the same time manage the collection of the electricity revenue on behalf of municipalities, because if that happens, they can relieve municipalities of some of that debt, but it means going forward, they've got to have the ability to collect the money that is owed for the electricity they offer. You can't have it both ways, where you give electricity, you don't get any money back. When you apply for a tariff increase, you don't get it. That is what is killing Eskom, partly, because we're struggling them on both sides. They must produce electricity, but we don't want to pay them for it at the same time. And yet they can't apply for more money. That, John, makes no sense, and we must not tell the public in any way that it does.
We're going to leave it there. Zungizo Zibi, thank you very much. The chair of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. What do you make of that? Give us a call. 086 000 2032.
Specsavers now looks after your hearing as well as your vision with Specsavers Audiology. With 60 stores and counting, we are South Africa's largest audiology group. For a limited time only, buy one rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. You heard right. Buy one rechargeable hearing aid and get 50% off the second. Find your nearest store at specsavers.co.za. Specsavers Audiology. Test your hearing and join the conversation. T's and C's apply.
It's time to shine for young athletes across South Africa. From thrilling football and rugby matches to intense netball games. Experience the passion and prowess of Mzansi's finest young sports stars. SuperSport Schools and SABC Plus bring you the specially curated channel dedicated entirely to school and youth sports. Join us as we celebrate their achievements and bring the excitement right to your screens. This is your chance to support the future of South African sports. The SuperSport Schools channel on SABC Plus, where every game is a home game. Don't miss a moment. Download the SABC Plus app today. Available on iOS, Google, and Smart TV. Or visit sabc-plus.com to start streaming. SuperSport Schools on SABC Plus. All the sport you care about most. Now streaming wherever you are.
48-year-old Zandile loves Outsurance Essential because it's a low-cost insurance designed for older cars. For her 2008 Toyota Yaris T3, she only pays R391 a month. With Outsurance Essential, you get up to R1 million liability cover. That means if you cause an accident, the other car could be covered for up to R1 million. And even more value with a motor warranty, which covers you for mechanical or electrical breakdowns. Get saving with Outsurance Essential for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 130,000 Rand. SMS car to 43187. That's car to 43187 today. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's information online.
The Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
23 minutes past 7. Let's talk about this delicate balancing act that South Africa has in foreign relations. The rise in tension between China and the US. The AGOA summit, South Africa's role in global diplomacy in the spotlight. America's seeing South Africa. We've got to manage economic interests amid the geopolitical rivalry. Find out more with Arno van Niekerk, who's a senior lecturer in economics at the University of the Free State. Let's start, if you don't mind, Arno. AGOA. It's the big discussion. It's been renewed until 2025. How important is AGOA to South Africa?
Good morning, John. Yes, AGOA is extremely important in terms of our relations with the US. Of course, mainly focused on trade. And remember, there's three key industries that's being affected most, which is the motor vehicle exports to the US, the wine industry, especially white wine, and then also the textile industry. So if we would lose the trade preferences we're getting, it would definitely have a huge impact on our domestic industries, and I foresee a lot of unemployment. A lot of people might lose their jobs because, the markets we wouldn't have the same market access to the US, and that will have a ripple effect. It could turn even into sanctions. So I think AGOA is just the tip of the iceberg. We really need to do something about restoring relations with the US.
The current situation, is that under threat?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, AGOA comes up for renewal, I think, in September, and the U.S. Senate will then reconsider. And I think by then, if let's call it the Trump effect continues, and South Africa, is not building the bridges and not, strengthening ties with the U.S., we are in significant danger for the first time in many years. AGOA started in 2000, so for the first time, AGOA can be cancelled. So, there's definitely high risk for us. And then, of course, a lot of farmers are affected by this directly. And I know Trump made the invitation, so it will also be interesting to see how the Trump administration deals with this, because they invited people to come over on the one hand, but on the other hand, the same people staying in South Africa might suffer, let's say farmers, but then also other industries as well. So, it's a delicate balancing act that we need to restore with the U.S. And it's not just about the U.S., it's the whole Western world, because the U.S. is very, intricately tied with Europe and the Western sentiments, which we need to manage.
What about BRICS? It's all very well having the States as this big trade partner, but we're involved with BRICS. Russia, China, India, huge economies. Can we rely on them if AGOA falls away?
Yeah, your question on what is BRICS, it's an interesting concept, the whole thing about BRICS, because, I'm an international economist, so I'm aware of, you've got free trade areas, you've got economic unions, customs unions, and BRICS doesn't meet any of those criteria. It's like just a joint kind of agreement between countries that are, let's say, developing countries or the global south, leading economies that just, it's about creating an alternative to the West, to the Western axis, if I can put it like that. So I think we shouldn't be too comfortable about, yes, if AGOA falls away, we'll just strengthen ties with China and India. China's economy is under tremendous pressure, and especially now that the US, they are now raising their own tariff retaliation towards the US. So those markets will also be under pressure, so it's definitely not like an escape route for us. It might actually backfire, and also, things might sour because we have expectations towards China and they won't be able to meet it because of US pressure.
There is the tension between the US, East and West, USA and China. South Africa's got this balancing act. Do we have the diplomacy to manage that?
Well, it doesn't seem so, to be honest, John. At the moment, the government is like, they want to convince the world that they are right, and it's not a listening government, and that's the challenge. The diplomacy skills, it's not there to build the bridges. I think Ramaphosa wants to be seen as this, the mediator, but actually we are a very small player in the global landscape, and I don't think the government realize, that it doesn't have much weight to throw around. So I think in that sense, we will need to tread carefully with our relations with the US, and I think we can, if we are humble as the government and as a nation, and say that, listen, let's see what we can do to meet your criteria. We don't have to bow to everything, but you need to be humble in this situation and know your place in the world. And I think in that sense we could play a role in terms of building bridges. Even the geopolitical tension between East and West, the US and China, because we are in the middle and having relations with both sides, we could actually play a lightning deflector role. But I think if the government responds the way it does, and you've got a minister that says, no, let's keep the minerals from them and all that, those knee-jerk reactions are definitely not helping.
Arno, economists are very realistic. Is there good news? Are there adults in the room, or is this generally the world being run by social media?
Good question. I think, honestly, at the end of the day, I do think those who make the decisions on policy and all the, let's say, the serious, the final decisions, there's sensibility there. And I think after all the emotions caused by social media and all these things, the dust settles, I do think sensibility will set in. We will realize we cannot lose our partnership with the US. Once economic logic and the calculations are being made, we will quickly realize, listen, we need to definitely do something here and change our stance. And also, the US actually needs South Africa because, if they lose South Africa, they lose a strong influence in Africa, and the Chinese is very interested in Africa. So from a geopolitical, strategic perspective, I do think in the end of the day, sensibility will definitely stand.
Arno Finikak, thank you very much. Senior lecturer in economics at the University of the Free State, brings us to exactly 7:30.
Good morning. Thanks, John. In the headlines, the South African Chamber of Commerce in the US is reported to have received over 17,500 emails, texts and calls from South Africans. The South Africans, predominantly from the Afrikaner community, are inquiring on behalf of their family members who are looking to leave South Africa. The African Transformation Movement leader Vuyo Zungula has called on government to impose severe penalties on anything that threatens the livelihoods of children and young people. He alluded to the Enyobeni Tavern tragedy and the spike in food poisoning incidents. And public sector unions under the Federation of Unions of South Africa have accepted government's wage offer of 5.5% for their members. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, hopefully you've remembered it's Wednesday, and Wednesday is the busiest of the 5 trips into work. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Wednesday does represent a peak. You can see that immediately as you look at the key routes around the country. SKM Pathali, Paul Kruger, very heavy, both routes into Pretoria CBD. N4 from Simon Vermuten through the N1 and down into Hatfield. There's some major congestion going on there as well today. Joburg's Mike 1 from Boyson's right through to Houghton is heavy up to Glenhove. Before you're out of that mess, the N1 leaving Soweto crashed near the Main Reef Road Bridge, heavy from Diepkloof as you line up through moving out of Soweto towards Ridderport, and still queuing up on the N12 eastbound towards a crash into the Golden Highway. Lights out all over Joburg. I'm sure there's a lot more this morning after that very heavy rain moved through the region late yesterday afternoon, and that traffic light failure with, of course, the high volumes just causing extra delays. Durban side, the N3 going in a crash between Spaghetti Junction and Sherwood, so the N3 into town from Pavilion slow, but it really is a major backlog morning on the N2 north and south, trying to get off that highway and into that N3 inbound. Cape Town very busy as well. The N1 from Plattekloof Hill right through to the city centre. Marine Drive from deep sort of Sunningdale territory through to Racecourse Road is heavy, and there's quite a backlog coming up the M5 this morning, which is a slightly different pattern. You're going to queue from Southwood or Southfield Parkwood up to a problem around the Ottery Road Bridge area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Right, here's Galaxy up to 4th on the log.
I know. What did they just do? The Rockets launching themselves. It's crazy to watch. But I mean, Sundowns fans, are you okay? Just doing a check. I mean, you beat Orlando Pirates. I'm sure Pirates are just pulling up now, sitting there with popcorn, watching this. It's going to be an exciting one. Sundowns last night walked away empty-handed. 1-0 was their loss to TS Galaxy at Mbombela Stadium. Khamogelo Sebelelele was the hero for Galaxy, scoring the only goal of the match just before half-time. Despite dominating possession, Sundowns just couldn't find the back of the net, and they were stopped by Galaxy's defence. This marks Galaxy's 11th unbeaten game under coach Adnan Beganovic, while Miguel Cardoso tasted his first league defeat in charge of the Brazilians. With these 3 points dropped, Pirates will feel there's still a title race left, but Sundowns do remain top of the table. Here's an elated Galaxy coach, Adnan Beganovic.
I am so proud of my team, how we play tactically this game, and then how much we play games in February. How we look physically. I'm so proud of this group of the players, and I give us all credit to the players to tonight. I want to enjoy. We need to enjoy, because what we do behind 3 months, it's unbelievable, unbelievable. I'm so happy.
And some more unbelievable action. Jude Bellingham's stoppage time winner saw Real Madrid twice come from behind to beat Manchester City 3-2, first leg of their Champions League playoff. Staying with the Champions League, Paris Saint-Germain took a big step towards qualifying for the last 16 with a 3-0 win over their French rivals Brest in the first leg of their playoff tie last night. Juventus, they have a slender advantage. 2-1 was their win over PSV Eindhoven in their Champions League knockout phase playoff. And netball, the Spa Proteas were greeted with a warm welcome from fans and media at Ora Tambo International Airport. The team returned after a month-long tour of Jamaica and England, where they recently participated in the Nations Cup. Despite a valiant effort, the Proteas narrowly lost to England, finishing with a score of 61-55 in a thrilling Nations Cup final that took place in London. Now, of course, they remained unbeaten in 3 matches prior to the final, overcoming their African competitors Malawi as well as Uganda, and achieving a remarkable win against the 4th-ranked English team. Here's the Spa Proteas coach, Jenny van Dijk.
But this was one of my best tours I've ever experienced. It was such a fantastic trip with a team that's full of so much life and energy and full of so much passion. And it could have been a long tour for us, and it could have become a difficult tour for us, but it never was. And I've never seen a team that were able to learn so much in the time away. We used absolutely every minute.
And finally, tennis action. The world number 1, Aryna Sabalenka, was stunned. She was beaten by Ekaterina Alexandrova in the last 32 at the Qatar Open. 3-6, 6-3, 7-6 was the win over Sabalenka. Sabalenka was playing in her first match since her defeat in the Australian Open final last month. And that's where we, finished by smashing that ball. We'll have more sport. Top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Darling Lachela joins us again. Darling, good morning to you again. This 2-pot system, Alex Forbes giving out some details about how many people are tapping into their retirement funds.
That's right, John. So Financial Services Group, Alex Forbes, has released statistics on the 2-pot retirement system, revealing that over 75% of retirement fund members who withdrew money from their savings components were between the ages 31 and 51 and were surveyed from September until the end of November. That's the statistics based on responses from 8,200 members and data analysis of over 1 million members show that the majority of withdrawal claims came from members with fund credits under 250,000 Rand and earning below 550,000 per annum. Alex Forbes says this suggests that financial needs outweigh the benefits of preserving savings for retirement. Now, the most common reasons for withdrawals were debt repayment and essential living expenses, with 50% of claimants using the funds to repay debt and 30% covering essential costs. Other users included major purchases, financial investments, and education expenses. The survey also revealed that 47% of members surveyed plan to claim in the future, and 34% of previous claimants intend to claim again.
And Impala Platts giving us a warning. What's happening?
So we're edging closer to earnings season, John, and we're seeing locally listed stocks updating markets before releasing their full financial results. Implats, no different. The miner, they're warning of a fall in profit of up to 49% as lower PGM prices continue to bite. Now, the downbeat update comes despite improved production and cost controls. The company's earnings dropped because it earned 8% less Rand revenue per ounce of platinum sold. This was made worse by the strong Rand exchange rate. As a result, the benefits of producing and selling more platinum and keeping costs under control were cancelled out. Zooming in on the update, Implants produced 4% less platinum overall, amounting to 1.82 million ounces. However, some of its mines did better. Impala Rustenburg increased production by 2%, while Impala Bafokeng kept its production steady. Markets in the meantime seem to have shrugged this off, with with Implat's share price edging higher in yesterday's trading session, up 0.8%.
And what's happening on the markets this morning?
Kicking things off in Asia, markets remain mixed at this hour as traders really cautious on the back of Powell's comments. He reaffirmed that the Fed is in no rush to cut rates, dashing many investors' hopes. Meanwhile, there's a tech stock rally bubbling under in the region, pushing the Hong Kong Hang Seng higher. It's up over 1.5%. Over in Wall Street, futures in the red, the trajectory of monetary policy really in focus there, with traders awaiting the consumer prices print and digesting commentary from the Fed. And then back at home, the hawkish Fed comments boosting the dollar and that weighing on the rand. It's sitting at 18.54 to the greenback. Local markets in the meantime ending yesterday's session mostly in negative territory, with the all share shedding over 1/3%.
Darling Lachela, thank you very much. More business coming up in an hour's time, 8:36 or thereabout.
In business, a rand saved is a rand earned. And almost 100,000 businesses trust Outsurance.
We in the eye care industry, we're saving over 1,200 Rand a month. To all the business owners, you've got nothing to lose by giving Outsurance a chance to quote on your business insurance. It's true to say that you always get something out with Outsurance.
For your business insurance, contact Outsurance to see how much your business could save. SMS quote to 43328 for immediate cover, or visit outsurance.co.za today. A licensed insurer in FSP. T's and C's online.
Hey neighbor, what happened to you last night? We were vibing, watching the game, and then our team scored, and the next thing you were gone.
Skis, I missed the goal. You know, just before our team scored, Eskom came and then our electricity was disconnected.
Yo, so much drama. What happened?
We got a fine for buying electricity tokens from an illegal vendor.
And then your fancy orange jumpsuit?
Oh, just in case I get arrested for not paying the fine, Pela.
Ungathatha chance. Buy your electricity legally. Stop buying electricity from illegal vendors and tampering with electricity meters.
Africa Update on SAFM.
It's good enough to have what's happening with Sipho Mantula. Sipho, good seeing you, or good seeing you earlier this morning. Good chatting to you again now. There is the AU meeting. Minister Ronald Namola is there. What's happening?
Refreshing morning, John, and Jumbo Africa to the listeners. Indeed, John, the Africa Union 46th ordinary session is taking place today and tomorrow for the Ministers of Foreign Affairs in Addis Ababa under the theme Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparations. This is a very important meeting of ministers, John. As you know, that there's also appointment of commissioners who will be heading different sectors in the AU. And South Africa has two candidates, Dr. Mulapo Tobela and Ms. Lerato Mataboge, who will be playing their role in the issues around education, science, technology, infrastructure, energy. But this meeting of ministers also, John, very important, as South Africa is currently the presidency of the G20. These issues will be engaged by Minister Lamola. And finally, the conflict in the Eastern DRC, John, cannot be left out. It will be engaged by Ministers of Foreign Affairs today in Addis Ababa to say, where is AU Agenda 2063 when there is conflict in East DRC?
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. It's all very well looking at, and we definitely need, after decades of colonialism, apartheid, slavery, slave trade, and all those things in Africa, but are they focusing on the current needs in the continent?
Absolutely, John, they do. And when you do understand is that the AU is driven by civil society, is driven by member states, and it will be important for this team to be known in many African member states. I just feel you have raised this issue of, are these things relevant to the people? You'll find that yes, they are, but it is important when the AU Agenda 2063 can be known in African member states.
Then the Corruption Perception Index is out, the CPI. How did Africa do?
Now, when you look at Africa, Seychelles, it is emerging as a top performer, John, scoring 72 out of 100, and then followed by Rwanda and Cape Verde and Botswana. Actually, Botswana, Rwanda, they are tying at 57, Cape Verde at 62 points. East Africa, Kenya not doing well, John, 32 out of 100. And Uganda also very down, as well as Tanzania. I've not seen South Africa, but when you look at the South Sudan, Somalia, Eritrea, Equatorial Guinea, lowest ranking nations with corruption index, very high when you look at the issues. Seychelles, John, how did they manage? They are saying in Seychelles they are active in prosecuting corruption cases and improving transparency in financial ownership.
Ongoing issues in Niger, the release of former leader Mohamed Bazoum.
Remember that the UN has been calling for his immediate release since the coup in 2023 in Niger. He and his wife, they've been cut out of all contacts, and they are just in a presidential wing residence in Niamey, the capital city of Niger. It's only the doctors that are allowed to visit them. But this call for the UN, Secretary General Antonio Guterres, it has been demanding the release, saying that it's arbitrary arrest since July 26, 2023. The lawyers have tried, John, but the military government, it says they are rejecting this UN expert claims because the same former president is communicating with other forces hostile to Niger. You'll recall his presidential immunity was revoked in 2024 in June. So it is still tough and rough for the former president Bazoum in Niger.
And Sweden coming to the rescue of some youths in northern Mozambique.
That is in Cabo Delgado, John. The Swedish, they know their national interest where they are. They're not just throwing $11 million or 10.6 euros. They have a national interest. But this money goes to the World Food Program and the United Nations Children's Fund for the coming 3 years to assist the peace building, the education of the youth in Cabo Delgado. Considering Mozambique has been on an election mode, crisis and violence. But now the youth of Mozambique, they've got a rescue now coming from the Swedish government as well as the UNICEF and the United Nations to assist the youth of that country.
So there's always just a little behind-the-scenes negotiation happening there.
Yeah, correct, John.
Historical archives, what happened today, the 12th of February?
Historical archives, so let me go 37 years ago, John, to the former homeland of Bophuthatswana, where one activist was arrested, detained with electric shock treatment by the members of special branch of the former Bantustan leader of President Mangope and his generals. That was Samuel Twane Galeboe. That shows, John, when you look at the files, I was looking at the TRC files of this guy, Samuel Twane, how he was tortured by some Afrikaners, promising him money to can give them the indication of where Rocky Malbana missing, which you can recall that was one of the military coups in the early years of 1988, John. When you talk of the Sahel, South Africa also had attempted military coups from Transkei to Bophuthatswana. Asante sana, John, as was leading the conversation, SAFM observing the Black History Month.
Sipho Mantula, thank you very much. It's 14 minutes to 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Take some voice notes. Voice note number, as always, 0614 104 107. Let's start. Wow, we're going to start a little bit earlier on.
Good morning, John and my fellow listeners. My brother, it's neither here nor there whether Duduzile apologized or not. The fact is she has already said her part. She has already laid bare the feelings about the SG of the party. And I can bet with my last cent, my brother, that majority of the senior leaders of the MKP share the same perspective with her about Floyd, because their silence in this issue speaks louder. But these are all the consequences of revolving the MKP around one single person, being the president and the father of the boss lady. And she knows that the party does not belong to her father. She wouldn't behave as what she's doing now. But Nayana Floyd aya Queen Mar. Thank you very much. Tapelo Pilusa Kamashwanga Anyela Giyane.
Let's take one more voice note on that same topic.
Hi, Duduzile Zuma, she don't want even to pretend. She don't want Floyd Shivambu. She mentioned clearly on her letter. She apologized on his father, on the leadership, but not to Floyd Shivambu. I'm Kululeko Duma from Harding Edge, Santombe.
Hasim in Johannesburg, you want to talk about Donald Trump? Go ahead.
Yeah, Stephen, you're a sports guy, and I know that Chomsky says that we spend too much time analyzing sports and we don't apply to real political life. But if we did, you would know that, we have our team, South Africa, and Trump is really a contradictory figure. And every time he says something, or they say something on social media, not even changing laws, right? There's a lot of resistance to his measures inside the country. People are taking him to court. we've got to wait this out, so really just to build our own power. And it's an opportunity for us to determine where we stand as a country in the continent. But all the kind of commentators you've heard are so defensive of looking at the possibilities. What Trump is doing is very contradictory. He wants to defend so-called stolen land in South Africa, but he wants to steal land in Gaza. So clearly we don't have to take this guy too seriously, but we have to wait him out, build our power, build the African region, and make sure that it is more egalitarian than what it is now. But we have an opportunity.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I like what you say about it's an opportunity now to look to other places, to not completely wipe off the states. But it is this balancing act that we need to do because we do make a lot of money from the states. So we can't just say, all right, America, we're out, right?
Yeah, but we don't, for example, buy petrol at the last time I remember from Iran and stuff like that because we were afraid of this. There's a whole lot of opportunities there to say, well, we're getting cheaper petrol. What do we do with Angola nearby? We don't have to damage the environment. There's a whole new way that we can look at it as an opportunity to rebuild our economy. But most importantly, we're having a conversation with the Afrikaner community for the first time because they were making private campaigns, if you like, AfriForum, not the whole community. And I really beg to have a discussion with Creel and others about where's the anti-imperialist Afrikaners that used to be around? I mean, they just like acting like lackeys, Afrikaners are incredibly proud people, man.
That's it in Johannesburg. Thank you very much. We're going to take more calls in a moment. Let's get the latest traffic now at 9 minutes to 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Pretty heavily backed up northern suburbs of Joburg. We've got traffic lights out all over the show. And Wednesday, when Wednesday comes along, it's a midweek Wednesday. It's higher volumes, and it just sort of exacerbates the problem. And I'm sure there's some more traffic lights that are off this morning after the big storm that moved through Joburg last night. But if you look at routes like Bayers Nordier from Honeydew all the way to Cresta, Malabongwe from Cosmo City, Kaya Sound through North Riding all the way to Stratham Park, all over four ways, just loads and loads of traffic lights out there. Your Vidcop and Cedar, William Mandela, Bayers Nordier, Malabongwe, they are main road in from Lone Hill. They are really heaving along. The Mike 1, pretty heavy as well today, queuing up from Boyson's, Gold Reef City, all the way through to Grayston Drive. Some problems with congestion as you come off the highway onto Grayston Drive around towards sort of Linden and Daisy. The M1 North, the crash at Soweto, still backlogging traffic from the Deep Cliff interchange, making your way through towards the main Reef Road Bridge territory. And the R21 onto the R24, a crash just holding you up in the airport area. The N14, N1's pretty heavy today. Krugersdorp Highway from the R55 Pretoria West exit moving through to John Foster on your way to Pretoria, all very slow. The N4 into Hatfield, a disaster as well. Big queues from Simon Vermuten. Durban side, the N3 driving inbound. An earlier crash at Spaghetti Junction is really the reason that you're stuck back at Pavilion Mall and probably back behind that to Paradise Valley in from Pinetown to Durban, very slow. The N2 north and south backlogging into Spaghetti Junction. M7, Queensborough down to Bel Air Wakes is really bad if you're bluff bound. And the M4 this morning, heavier than normal from Mshlanga down towards the Blue Lagoon area. Normally you're out of that at Virginia Airport, not this morning, going right down to that bridge system. Cape Town, the N1 from Durban Road, Plattekloof Hill territory, Belleville, all the way through to the city centre stays heavy. A lot of traffic on the N7, both ways into Bosmansdam Road, particularly bad as you line up all the way back to Epping, right through to that Summer Greens and Montague Gardens exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Calvin in Johannesburg, you also want to talk about Donald Trump?
Yes. Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, great. So it's quite a mixed one. So I watched the video of Donald Trump when he said he's going to stop this aid fund because with Musk's Doge department, they discovered a lot of illicit funding happening with this aid fund. And what's bothering me is the journalist is not reporting on what Trump actually said. Like, you guys are not even playing the video clip. Donald Trump clearly said the leadership is doing terrible things, and they're going to do investigation and stop the funding until they fully know what's going on. Until then, the funding will be stopped. Then the news blew it up saying that no, now it's like an American South African thing, and America's bullying us. No, they're not bullying us. If you see what they found, they're funding news outlets to basically push the talking points, to make Trump look bad, to make Musk look bad. What they are doing is actually it's cutting America's expenditure because it's pushing America in debt, and they're just trying to get out of this debt bubble. But the news is turning everything against Trump and Musk as if they don't know what they're doing, as if they're bad people. But all they're doing is stopping basically the New World Order, the UN Agenda 21, One World Government Program. And all these news outlets, they are just covering up the truth. They're changing the talking points. Why don't you just play the clip of what Trump actually said? Because I haven't heard you guys play the clip even once. And on Eskom, the reason we have everything's going wrong with Eskom is due to the Green New Deal that the ANC signed. Every captured government is signing this Green New Deal, which is stopping funding to all coal-powered power stations. That's the reason everything's going backwards. And you guys are not reporting on the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is the heart of our Eskom problem. And we are like hitting a ball around the bush here, staying away from the Green New Deal, just saying, oh, this is collapsing. But it's the Green New Deal which is the head of what's actually going on. Why don't you actually do real journalism and tell us exactly what's inside of this Green New Deal? And why did Donald Trump stop the Green New Deal and the Paris Accord Agreement? And this is programs that's about to enslave humanity. It's going to collapse our country. And we don't have real journalism that's actually reporting on real news. So, yeah, that's my stance on it.
Galvin in Johannesburg raising a couple of topics. Let's go to a response with a senior lecturer in economics. We were talking about the states and the GOA and the deal. Mfundo, you have an issue with Arno Finikak?
Yes. Good morning, John, and good morning to SAFM listeners. Just to weigh in on some of the statements that he made, in which I'm not in support of Ramaphosa, however, but for him to say that we got an arrogant government, must we now bow in for Donald Trump? This government was elected by the majority of South Africans, and by such, the agreements or the amendment on our constitution, it is then the will of South Africans, not the will of Donald Trump, not the will of AfriForum. I sense that the senior professor more sounds like an agent of the AfriForum. Because if you're gonna then bow into Donald Trump, what about the majority of South Africans that voted for their government? It's the same thing that he could have just said, that Americans must bow in for what, or Donald Trump must bow in for what the world is asking for, even though Donald Trump was voted democratically by the majority of Americans. So he really sounded to me as an agent of AfriForum. In parting, John, I would like to weigh into this last caller that just spoke now, which really for him to say that I'm not defending also journalism here, but the executive order is there for everyone to hear. How can Trump say there's genocide or that there's a constitution that is not in favor of the minority in South Africa? Then that is there for the public to hear. What else does he want to hear from you guys? I'm not defending journalism yet. The executive order is clear about what must happen. So he still wants the journalism to publicize that.
All right, I think that's the end of Mfundo. Is Mfundo gone? All right. I think Mfundo's points were well made. I think we got them. Jacques in Durban, I think our last call for now. Go ahead.
Good morning. How are you?
Lekker.
Okay. Couple of things. Everybody calls Donald Trump a racist, but they don't have any evidence, including us as South Africans and everybody else. I think that's a very important fact you must remember. We can't be accusing people without any evidence. I think that's not fair. I think we all know what happened previously and what happens in the courts. The other thing I'd like to know, tell the listeners or to tell yourselves, is that my opinion is that if we feel that Donald Trump and the United States is wrong in what they've done, I think we should break all ties with the U.S., because we shouldn't be sitting on a fence. We cannot expect American money to support our health care when it is us, the South Africans, that are putting ourselves in these types of situations. And then to go back to colonialism and having back the land, I think if we're going to say that Donald Trump is wrong, then the Khoisan king that was on yesterday, I think he's right. I think we should give back all the land back to the Khoisan people, because we can't say that we are the owners of the land or the custodians of the land when we weren't here first. So I think that people need to come back with facts and figures. And like I said yesterday, you had a professor on, and he came with simply no facts and figures or evidence to support what he was saying. And I think the same thing with all our listeners. We need to understand that these are our opinions. Donald Trump has an opinion, and everybody has a right to have an opinion unless they're stating facts which is actually not true.
Jacques in Durban, Donald Trump has opinions. Give us a call, 086 000 2032. Let's take one more voice note before we go to the news. I think, was there one? Oh, let's talk about China marriages because we can.
Good morning, John. I guess the Chinese government saw that in the long run, unless they did something about the population that was out of control, they were going to have problems with high unemployment, a demand for a limited amount of resources, no matter how big your economy is. Now, if that's the case for China, how much more concerned should the South African government be, considering the fact that we are a small economy? And I think last year we recorded probably the highest birth rate ever. 2,700 teenage mothers gave birth, not counting mothers in their 20s and above. So the birth rate in South Africa has exceeded 3,000 per year. What's that going to do to unemployment and the demand for housing and et cetera, et cetera? Thanks, Lionel Whitbank.
Take more voice notes later on as well. That's 0614 104 107. Coming up after the news, the CSIR says that current climate models underestimate the decline in ocean productivity. We're going to talk to the CSIR about their latest research and worrying numbers that there were over 7,000 children under the age of 18 who were treated for suicide attempts across South Africa from April to December last year. We'll find out why. All of that's after the news at 8 o'clock.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30760. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, over 17,000 South Africans inquire on U.S. resettlement and public sector unions accept government's wage offer. Good morning. The South African Chamber of Commerce in the U.S. is reported to have received over 17,500 emails, texts and calls from South Africans. The South Africans, predominantly from the Afrikaner community, are inquiring on behalf of their family members who are looking to leave South Africa. This follows the signing of an executive order by the U.S. President Donald Trump, which also allows refugee status to the Afrikaner community residing in South Africa. The South African ambassador to the United States, Ibrahim Rasool, says he has summoned the chair of the South African Chamber of Commerce in the U.S. to get clarity on this matter. He says they will continue to engage with the U.S. decision makers about the real political discourse in South Africa. Meanwhile, majority of political parties represented in Parliament have expressed deep concern on the position taken by the U.S. administration to cut funding to South Africa. DA leader and Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen says the position taken by the U.S. calls for the government of national unity to unite.
Potential threat of AGOA and possibly even sanctions by a regime driven by an administration that will put America's interests ahead of ours. And make no mistake about that. And so what do? When a country faces a crisis, it needs to unite and navigate the threat. And that is what we must do now. And the GNU must practice what it preaches. And that is why, in a variety of portfolios, we've taken a decision to focus like a laser beam on growth and jobs. And that was what the President set out in the SONA.
The African Transformation Movement leader Vuyo Zungula has called on the government to impose severe penalties on anything that threatens the livelihoods of children and young people. He alluded to the Enyobeni Tavern tragedy and the spike in food poisoning incidents. 21 young people were killed at the Enyobeni Tavern in East London in 2022, and over 20 children died from food poisoning in the year 2024. Zungula was speaking during the parliamentary debate on the State of the Nation address in Cape Town.
It is an embarrassment that our kids died of food poisoning, yet foreign spaza shop owners were just requested to register. Mr. President, the spazas selling expired and fake foods will not be solved by registration. The solution lies in strict enforcement of immigration laws and mass employment of environmental health practitioners.
Alleged underworld boss Nafiz Modak is expected to take the stand today in the Western Cape High Court to answer to the charge of murder of top anti-gang unit detective Charles Kinnear. This comes after his bid failed to have charges against him withdrawn. Modak, Zain Killian and 13 others are on trial on over 100 charges, which include murder, attempted murder and contravening the Prevention of Organised Crime Act. Kinnear was shot dead in front of his Bishop Lavis home in September 2020. The court previously heard that on Modak's instruction, Kinnear's phone was pinged allegedly by Killian over 2,000 times up until the day he was killed. Police have arrested 2 more suspects in connection with the torching of over 50 Patco buses in Mpumalanga last month. Police say the suspects were arrested yesterday at Siyabuswa in Mpumalanga. The suspects are expected to appear in court today on charges of malicious damage to property. This brings to 4 the number of people arrested. And finally, public sector unions under the Federation of Unions of South Africa, FEDUSA, have accepted government's wage offer of 5.5% for their members. The Public Service Coordinating Bargaining Council gave the parties 21 days last month to canvass their members on the final offer from the employer. The FEDUSA bloc has been joined by the South African Policing Union that has also accepted the same offer. The workers' demands have been revised down several times from an initial 12%. FEDUSA's General Secretary, Rifda Ajam.
NAPTOSA has indeed signed off on the agreement, and so too have our larger unions within the chamber, and that is NAPTOSA, the PSA, as well as HOSPIS. NAPTOSA within the Education Labour Relations Council would have the majority seat then, which ultimately means that our other unions in chamber, the SAOU, NATU as well, have signed off, and we are pleased to announce that the members have spoken. They have taken a number of issues into careful consideration.
Recapping the top story, the South African Chamber of Commerce in the US is reported to have received over 17,500 emails, texts and calls from South Africans, predominantly from the Afrikaner community, inquiring on behalf of their family members who are looking to leave South Africa. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Love is in the air, but there could be some great car insurance savings for you too. Get a quote, and if Outsurance can't beat your car insurance premium, ask them for 500 Rand cash. Make that 1,500 Rand if you've been claim-free and with the same insurer for 3 years. Get monthly savings on your car insurance or cash in your pocket. Either way, you win. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754. With Outsurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's are online.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Here's a big one to avoid. Ekurhuleni side of Joburg. If you're on the R21 approaching the airport, wanting to swing onto the R24 to turn to Joburg, there's a truck that is jackknifed just before Barbara Road. So it's technically the R24 westbound before Barbara Road, but the queue is significant. It's right back through the R21 sort of on-ramp and then right back towards sort of Atlas Road territory. So if you're coming down the 21, you'd want to off-ramp somewhere around Kempton Park and take some local routes to avoid that. Still very heavy on the M1 North leaving Soweto. Crash up by Main Reef Road Bridge, causing a pushback to Deepcliff interchange. Crash on the N3 South going down towards Linksfield Road, starting to slow things up through Galulis, and some heavy pressure on the N1 in Pretoria this morning from the N4 down towards sort of Atterbury Road territory. All of a sudden that's getting very heavy. N14 Krugersdorp Highway from the R55 Pretoria West exit up through Bruckfontein towards John Foster is slow. Durban's M4, the Ruthfirst Highway coming in from Umhlanga remains heavily backed up as you move down towards Virginia Airport. And Cape Town, a lot of traffic on the N7 through Goodwood both ways, but particularly particularly bad going north up towards the Bosmansdam exit. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headlines. Cricket action. The Proteas, they have to beat Pakistan today to qualify for the final of the Tri-Series. And in soccer action, the Bosnian Adnan Beganovic stretching his unbeaten run, becoming the coach of TX Galaxy, and that's unbeaten run to 12 matches. All these stories and more at around 8:30.
The Morning Brief, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
John Kerricker in for Thulasizwe. Good morning to you. Into the final hour of the show. We're going to be talking about what's happening with the taxis in the Western Cape, torching of taxis at the Nyanga terminus on Sunday. And then suicides. It's horrific numbers. Children under the age of 18 treated for suicide attempts. How many? 7,400 between April and December. We're going to try and have a conversation with Casey Chambers and find out exactly what is going on, and also raising awareness about the mental health challenges that young people are facing in South Africa. So that's coming up in a moment. As always, we'll take your calls. We'll take your voice notes as well. Those numbers, I've forgotten. Is derelict the word? I haven't done it enough. When I think a derelict, I think a Zoolander. You can give us a call, 086 000 2032, or your WhatsApp voice number, or you can send voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Whether you're having a morning or a morning, you woke up like this or like this. Mornings love McDonald's. So, choose happy and enjoy a short filter coffee for only R14.90 at McDonald's. What's not to?
John Gericka on SAFM.
11 minutes past 8. The Western Cape branch of the South African National Taxi Council has condemned the torching of taxis at the Nyanga terminus on Sunday. It has raised concerns about the stability and safety of the local taxi industry, with Santaco urging all parties involved to resolve the matter peacefully to prevent further damage. Mandla Hermanus is chairperson of Santaco in the Western Cape. Mandla, good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us. Give us a bit more details about this torching of these taxis.
Good morning to you and your listeners, and thank you for having me. This is one route or one primary association that operates between Nyanga and Cape Town. And what we have noticed is that the association has been faced with challenges for the last 2 years. Early last year, 12 drivers were shot and killed from the same association, and 4 taxi operators, including a member of the executive committee, a lady who was the secretary. So we believe there is a link between the torching of these taxis and those incidents that happened 2 years ago. And but we have engaged with the primary association and the regional structure that is a mother body to that association, which is the Cape Amalgamated Taxi Association. And we are meeting with them later today to map a way forward, because this thing has been going on for far too long, and drastic measures have to be taken. And we will even engage the MEC and SEPS so that whilst we mediate the conflict within that primary association, the law on the other side must be firm and trace the perpetrators and bring everyone to book. So, and also we believe at the core of the conflict there is the issue of how the association is run, who manages the funds, who is held accountable when there is mismanagement. And so there is always a fight. Those who are in the executive are always faced with challenges by the general membership. So, and then those who get removed from the executive, then they regroup, and it becomes this vicious cycle. It's a fight for the control of the resources of the primary association.
So it's not one taxi organization against another, it's internal.
It's internal, yes. It's the same primary association, people who work on the same routes together, they have the same executive committee, they have the same chairperson, and they're fighting amongst themselves. And it has just escalated now to this level where it results in the torching of taxis, because all the taxis belong to that same association. So it's not a fight about routes between rival taxi associations. No, it's internal.
Is this the Cape Amalgamated Taxi Association?
Yes, the primary association is affiliated to the Cape Amalgamated Taxi, because the Cape Amalgamated Taxi Association is a mother body with the primary associations that are affiliated to it. This one is called the Nyanga Cape Town route.
What are law enforcement doing about this? If you say there's a connection between the killings and this torching, have they worked that out as well?
Yes, but the challenge always with the taxi violence, you seldom see arrests being made. Sometimes you wonder if there's special attention that is paid to these killings and these torching, because even now, no arrests have been made, and we are not even sure if there are suspects that are being pursued in relation to this and the killings that have taken place because for all the killings that have taken place in that association in the last 2 years, I'm not aware of a single arrest that has been made. So that is always a challenge, because now people, they act with impunity. You know, they don't fear that they will get caught, because we are not sure if there is seriousness in terms of pursuing the perpetrators of the violence.
Maybe it's a naive question, Mandla, but why don't you as Santaco say to this taxi association that they can't operate until they sort themselves out?
That is the thing, because as Santaco, we don't have a regulatory powers. When we do these kinds of things, even at a regional level, when the mother body says we will stop the operations of a primary association until they sort themselves out, that primary association can go to the Transportation Board, and what the Transportation Board, which is the Department of Transport, will tell you is that you as a mother body, you did not issue any operating license to any member of the association. The operating licenses are issued by the Department of Transport, and therefore only the Department of Transport can suspend or expel any member of a taxi association, because we don't have the powers to do that, even when we want to.
And what is the Department of Transport saying about this whole incident?
Well, they always wait for investigations, and because nothing is coming from such, because sometimes they also rely on law enforcement to say, okay, we've arrested this person, a docket has been opened, and then when that person appears in court, then that creates grounds for the department to act, to say, now that you are implicated in this crime, therefore, as the department, we are suspending operating license, or we are suspending the operations of the entire association. But it takes long because they need evidence. And then the other challenge is that because of these killings, the association is paralyzed by fear. So you struggle to get information from the members of the association because they fear for their lives. If they say something, there is no trust that what they say in confidence won't land them in trouble with the same people who are perpetrating the violence.
How is this affecting commuters?
It is tense. About what we have done, we've sent out our own working committees. We have spoken to the City of Cape Town, and they've also deployed additional law enforcement officers around the area, and also SEPS is doing regular patrols. So the operations are happening as normal. There was no disruption at all to our normal operations, but there's always the sense of apprehension from the commuters, because you never know what's going to happen when. But the presence of law enforcement around taxi ranks, it helps to calm down the situation.
Mandla, you say you're going to meet now with the Cape Amalgamated Taxi Association. When is that happening, and will there be resolution to this?
We will be meeting with them at 1 o'clock. because we gave them time yesterday to meet with that primary association as the regional structure. So they've met, and so they'll be giving us feedback at 1 o'clock today. And we are hoping from that we'll be able then to say, okay, this is how we move forward with this. If we don't find resolution, but we should be able today to say, these are the burning issues, and how do we think these issues should be tackled? Who else needs to get involved? If it's the MEC, then we invite the MEC.
Right.
But we should be able to have a way forward this afternoon after that meeting.
Look forward to hearing more from you. Mandla Amanis, thank you very much, Chairperson of Santaco in the Western Cape.
Thank you.
V up your 2025 with Vodacom Business and Galaxy AI. Save up to 20,000 Rand with trade-in when you pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra 256 gig on a Red Business 1.5 gig plan for just 1,539 Rand per month over 24 months. Enhance your deal with the Samsung Galaxy Watch 7 eSIM for 69 Rand extra per month. Available in-store and online. Further together. Vodacom Business.
Masandawana want to display their elite status with a graduation lecture